Hi algebra students, this is our introduction video on representing and solving inequalities. This is the first lesson in our last unit, which is going to be all about inequalities. You learned about these back in pre-algebra. These first couple might be more of a review, but we definitely get to learn even more and go deeper on inequalities in algebra class. This first part here is definitely a review. We've got inequalities, and what this whole unit will be about is just like the opposite of equations. You use inequalities when you are comparing something that is not equal. And I've got the 4 inequality signs down here below. Greater than or equal to, less than, and less than or equal to. One of the things we can do with inequalities is represent different situations. So for example, if I wanted to communicate that Maria has fewer than 4 dogs, the words fewer than are my clue that we're using an inequality. Fewer than means the same thing as less than. So if I let D represent the number of dogs, I could say the number of dogs is less than 4 to represent this sentence. Go ahead, pause the video and try these next 2 here. As you're reading through these next 2, the key words here are going to be no more than. No more than means no more than. So it can be less than, it can be equal, it just can't be more or greater than. So for this next one, if we wanted to represent it, we could say if P is the number of people needs to be less than or equal to 6, just not greater than 6. That third one, Jeffrey has at least 5 students. Those words at least tell you what inequality sign you need. At least, remember, it doesn't mean less. It's the opposite. At least means 5 is the smallest you can have. It's the least. So it needs to be 5 or more. So we could say if S is the number of students, it needs to be greater than or equal to 5. Those words at least mean greater than or equal to. No more than is less than or equal to. This last one here is the only one that's really different from what you saw back in pre-algebra. Here, if we wanted to represent that you're going to be gone between 7 to 10 days, we'll let D be the number of days, and it means 10 is the most. So the number of days you could be gone needs to be less than or equal to 10. The way we show a range and show that there's a minimum and a maximum is you use 2 inequality signs. So 10 is the most, but I also want it to say that 7 is the least. And see how D is physically in between the 7 and the 10? This right here, if I pretend that this side isn't here, says 7 is less than or equal to D, so D needs to be greater than or equal to 7, and less than or equal to 10. Basically, if you're trying to show it's between 2 numbers or in a range, you need 2 inequalities. So this is the first part of our lesson. It's going to be on representing situations with inequalities. The second part is going to be a review of what you know about solving inequalities. And to start the review, I want you to go ahead, pause the video here, and solve this equation, since we've already learned that in pre-algebra and in Unit 1 of algebra. I've got each one of my steps in a different color here. I'm subtracting 4 on both sides. That gives me negative 2x equals 6. And then dividing by negative 2 to get x all by itself. And our answer is x equals negative 3. I want to review solving equations because solving inequalities, you use the exact same steps. If you like drawing that line when you solve, our line would be at our inequality sign. And then all of the steps are the same. I start with my constant and I'm doing the opposite. Opposite of positive 4 is negative 4, so I subtract on both sides. That leaves me with 0 here, and so negative 2x is greater than 6. My final step, I need to divide both sides by negative 2 to get x all by itself. The only difference when you are solving inequalities is what we're about to see here. If you do something like this, if when you are solving your inequality, you multiply or divide by a negative number. Here, I am dividing by negative 2, so it means I'm going to do this. Anytime you multiply or divide by a negative number, you must or change the inequality. So that means for this problem here, I'm still doing all the same steps, but when I write my answer, this inequality sign here is going to flip. It's going to change directions. And so it would change to the less than sign. And my answer would be x is less than -3. I'm flipping my sign because I divided by a negative. In today's lesson, we're going to practice both of these things, representing situations with inequalities and solving more inequalities like this, because tomorrow's lesson is going to be combining those two things together. Thanks so much for watching, and have a good rest of your day.